Belizeans who otherwise qualify, otherwise qualify for registration are unable to do so because of a combination of bureaucratic incompetence and in some cases some brazen political interference taking place. And this has been scandalously manifested at the Vital Statistics Unit office, where workers and supporters of the governing party are a constant presence in the Vital Statistics office, Madam Speaker. And they appear to be guiding and directing the work of that department. Big people connected to the UDP in there, guiding. Similar thing happening with the Elections and Boundaries Department, Madam Speaker, over the last couple of weeks, when they can't get their way, when they can't get people on the list that they want, then they move people now, transfer registering officers, transfer them out, move this one wrong, because particular people, their operatives, are not getting what they want, and don't believe these people are towing the UDP line. That's what's happening. So we have the Vital Statistics Office failing the Belizean people, and we have the Elections and Boundaries Department now playing politics. The former chairman of the UDP is the head of the Elections and Boundaries Commission, something that should never have been done, Prime Minister, but you did it. Should never have been done, the former chairman. He is now acting like a political operative as the head of the commission. No national interest, it's political operative. What is in the best interest of my party? That's how they're dealing with this referendum, preparing for this referendum. No meetings. Our commissioners don't get, they keep calling and asking for information, not getting any information. How can we run a country that way? How can we ask the opposition to support anything we're doing if that's how we operate? So, Madam Speaker, how am I expected to come here today to support the holding of a referendum when members of my own constituency, Freetown, through no fault of their own, Madam Speaker, no fault of their own, are being denied the opportunity to participate in that referendum? It is absolutely morally repugnant that this UDP government could be so dismissive of the constitutional rights of so many Belizeans, Madam Speaker. I think, for example, of the well-known educator and historian in my constituency, J. Alexander Bennett. Man is 86 years old, voted in every election for the past 60 years. And Vital Statistics said to this man, we can't find your birth certificate, the page, either we rat eat the page or somebody tear it out. That's exactly what they said. So, sorry? That's what they said to him. Too bad, sir.
Honorable member, you have a clarification.
I am.
And a matter of clarification, that person is registered at Vital Statistics, but under a different name that they go by, the Belize. So you have to register by the name where you register your as picnic, or unless you change your name by deed poll.
Thank you.
Sir.
That is not true. You say,
no,
you are saying, sir.
Honorable member,
Make
please.
that your turn for talk. So
Yes, sir. No, man, please, honorable.
Go ahead.
No. I'm not misleading. No, I'm not. I had to do that very thing for many other people. I had to do that. If I could have done that for Mr. Bennett, I would have done it. I had to do it for many other people in the area. I am telling you exactly what Vital Statistics told him.
I see birth certificate.
Sir.
Carry people in they make it public.
So who have the birth certificate?
It's right there.
You have it?
Vital Statistics. If you want
you have it? if you have the...
I don't want
it's taking me off.
certificate. Make I get this clear, Madam
Anyway.
Speaker. I know say I got one birth
Father,
certificate. The birth certificate is at the Vital Statistics Office. All right?
Anyway, Madam Speaker, my honorable friend, take my word for it. You are mistaken about that issue. Take my word for it. All right? All right. So, Madam Speaker, the point is, Mr. Bennett cannot vote in the referendum. He cannot. He's not on the voters list. And, well, maybe on a...
member of the gallery, you cannot respond and take part in the debate here this afternoon. Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's Mr. Bennett's son, and sorry, you
it's
can't.
an emotional
yes,
issue,
yes.
so maybe we should move
So anyway,
on.
that's not good enough for me. It's not good enough for Mr. Bennett. Our government, madams, our government. No man, why? Man. Our government, Madam Speaker, our government has an obligation and duty to Mr. Bennett and others like him to ensure that they are not denied the right to participate in this referendum. You have a duty to see that. And with the current delay, we have an opportunity, Madam Speaker, to fix it. We understand what is going on today, Madam Speaker. We understand the Prime Minister and his government are embarrassed by their failures in court, the exposing of their incompetence, and now seek to spread propaganda that we on this side are obstructing and seeking to deny the people's right to vote in the referendum. But this is nothing, Madam Speaker, but foolish political propaganda. We on this side have a duty and an obligation to act as a check and balance on the government, to defend and protect the rights of our people to participate in the referendum, and to ensure that every step leading to the holding of the referendum is done in full compliance with the Constitution and laws of Belize, Madam Speaker. So we are here today, the bottom line, Madam Speaker, the bottom line is that we are here today because of an absolute failure of leadership by this Prime Minister and his government. This is an issue, this national issue, is one which requires that as a government we seek the full support and confidence of the Belizean people. This is what George Price, we throw around his name a lot, this is what the father of the nation or national hero, our great leader of the People's United Party understood in his long struggle for independence, Madam Speaker. He understood that if he was to achieve independence, he would need the full support and confidence of the Belizean people. And in order, very important, Mr. Speaker, because confidence and support doesn't fall from a tree. It doesn't come out of thin air. And in order to gain that support and confidence, he was prepared to do the long, hard work that was required. So he traveled the country, Madam Speaker, and met with the Belizean people in every village, every town, every city, explaining to them the importance of independence and what it would mean for them, their families, their communities, and the country, what it would mean for their national identity. That, Madam Speaker, is how we approach these issues. We contrast that with the leadership we have had on this ICJ referendum issue, Madam Speaker. Regrettably, and I say this regrettably because I have been very disappointed, regrettably, the approach of the Prime Minister has been dismissive and divisive. You know, we could have taken a much different road, Madam Speaker, working together, talking to the Belizean people together. But for whatever reasons, the Prime Minister chose not to pursue that road, that path. So he and his government have failed the Belizean people on this most important national issue. And I am unable, Madam Speaker, to support this bill.
Right Honourable Member from Fort George.
Madam Speaker, I begin by pointing out that it was the People's United Party that first passed a referendum law on the 6th of March, 1999, that provided for the sacred right for the sacred right of the Belizean people to decide by referendum on any proposed settlement with the Republic of Guatemala for resolving the Belize-Guatemala border dispute. So there should be no doubt in anybody's mind what has been the policy of the People's United Party when it comes to resolving this claim hanging over our heads. As far as I am concerned, and as far as I know, because I still remain a member of the executive of the People's United Party, I know that that policy has not changed. So there should be no doubt that the People's United Party is committed to the holding of a referendum for the Belizean people to decide yes or no to the ICJ. Because, Madam Speaker, and we need to go back into a little history. The Prime Minister gave a chronology of events this morning in opening the debate. I will just supplement that a bit. From its founding, the goal of the PUP has been, as every Belizean knows now, independence with full sovereignty and territorial integrity. Now, Madam Speaker, I believe is the time to consolidate that independence, that sovereignty, that territorial integrity. For it remains one of the principal aims and objectives of our party, the PUP, according to the party's constitution, to defend and maintain the political independence of Belize, its territorial integrity, and freedom for its people. Madam Speaker, successive governments of Belize, before and after independence, have spared no effort or expense to lobby the support of the international community for our territorial integrity, and to carry out good faith negotiations with the government of the Republic of Guatemala to settle this claim. In the immortal words of the Right Honourable George Price, let us negotiate without ceding 1 square centimeter of our land. No land cession. That has been the policy of the PUP, and it remains the policy. After 50 years, however, of fruitless negotiations, mediation, facilitation. We realized that the only way forward for Belize was to get Guatemala to agree to submit the settlement of the dispute to the ICJ, based on the rules of international law. Because, Madam Speaker, the law is on our side. One, we have the 1859 Boundary Treaty that Guatemala and Britain ratified, which defines our borders as they currently stand and as defined in our Constitution, the Constitution of Belize. We have the 1931 Exchange of Notes, which confirms the border treaty. We have the right to self-determination, which Belizeans exercised when we became an independent nation on the 21st of September, 1981. We have the well-established principle in international law of effective occupation. Belizeans have lived in peace in this land for over 200 years. Guatemala cannot establish title to any part of the territory of Belize. We have the joint legal opinion of distinguished jurists and professors of international law. We have these opinions, joint opinions, of international jurists and professors from Britain, the United States of America, Latin America, and now the Caribbean as well, who all conclude that Guatemala's claim to the territory of Belize, or any part of it, is without merit. Those are their words, and would be regarded as such by the ICJ. Let me, at this juncture, Madam Speaker, state for the record, because I believe in, first of all, being true to myself. Let me, at this juncture, for the record, state that as Foreign Minister, under the Right Honorable George Price, this was shortly after we had obtained our independence, when he was Prime Minister, I consulted with him, and after I got his approval, I did personally press the Guatemalans, since we were getting nowhere to settle the claim, to agree to put the dispute for resolution by the ICJ. The British had tried before and failed. At that time, the Guatemalans refused, even when I asked them to go, because I was asking them to go based on the strict legal basis. Later, Madam Speaker, we did come pretty close to resolving this dispute under President Serrano in 1991-92, when I was still Foreign Minister. But we all know what happened there. The man committed an autogolpe, they called it. The President could not get the support of his Congress. And then he started doing some very silly things, exercising dictatorial powers. So the army intervened, and he had to flee the country. I understand he may be still living in Panama in exile. But the important thing, Madam Speaker, is that with the work that we were doing, that President's decision to recognize the right of the Belizean people to self-determination and independence was not overturned by the Constitutional Court of Guatemala. In fact, they could not overturn it, because once you give recognition under international law, that's it. And thereafter, we established diplomatic relations with the Republic of Guatemala, which continues to this day. But, Madam Speaker, the Guatemalans persisted with their unfounded claim. They wanted land. They will settle for nothing less in the negotiations. And our policy was firm as well. No land cession. So we were at an impasse, and that impasse has continued all these years. That is why we say it was fruitless negotiations. Finally, in late 2007, when we were still in government, the PUP government, through the offices of the Secretary General of the OAS, was able to get Guatemala to agree to go to the ICJ, subject to the approval of the peoples in our respective countries by referendum. That referendum was held in Guatemala, and after several delays and postponement, the people there voted, albeit in a very low percentage, I believe 26 or something. But they voted in the majority in favor of resolving the dispute by the ICJ. We are stating these things, Madam Speaker, because sometimes people either don't know or forget our history. For instance, I'm sorry, the quarrelsome Minister of College Division he's talking about, in other words, he want to fight. But we're not here to fight, man. We're here to try and resolve this dispute. He wants to give the impression, as if though he wants to score political points on an important issue, which is symptomatic of the problem that we have today, that the Prime Minister was permissive enough, gracious enough to invite me to sit next to him at the Western Biltmore Hotel. Madam Speaker, I must point out to the record, because my people in the Fort George are listening to as well, you know, that I volunteered to be there. I volunteered to be there, and I think I explained it, because I felt it my duty to stand up for Belize and to set the record straight, that the two parties should have been working together on this issue from day one and should be working on it to this day. That is always my position. But, Madam Speaker, I have to go into some issues now that has caused some of people on my side to become very concerned. Wary, thank you. You have a tremendous grasp of the English language. Member for the Mesopotamia. We would be remiss, Madam Speaker, if we had failed to point out that this government has an abysmal record, not only in the education campaign on the road to referendum, but indeed in the way the conduct of the foreign ministry. I won't get personal today. The conduct of the foreign ministry in its relations with Guatemala and the way they have reacted to when Guatemala has shown hostile acts towards Belize. The government has not maintained the bipartisan approach with the opposition when it comes to the Guatemalan claim, which we have had for many years. And the Prime Minister can attest, by the way, if he cares to, that when, and I believe the member for Freetown pointed it out, when the PUP was in government, we kept the Prime Minister, when he was then leader of the opposition, fully informed on every step of the way in our relations with Guatemala, and indeed sought his concurrence to every decision we made touching in the relations with Guatemala. We even, as was pointed out earlier, appointed one of his trusted party officials, the late Alfredo Martinez, as Belize's ambassador to Guatemala. And I must say that was a very good decision on the part of the People's United Party, with the concurrence of the then leader of the opposition, because Alfredo was an excellent ambassador. After the signing of the special agreement by the Minister of Foreign Affairs in 2008, which, as I pointed out, was initiated, the path towards that, by the People's United Party, and we should not forget that, any one of us. And on that signing, following that signing of the special agreement, when a representative of the PUP was invited and was present, as has been pointed out, things seem to deteriorate, especially that by this so-called debacle that took place in Istanbul, when both parties were represented along with the foreign minister, to get a protocol, Sarstoon protocol, going, because by this time in 2015, the Guatemalan Navy began their threatening maneuvers in the Sarstoon River, purporting to attempt to annex the entire river. And the opposition was, forgive me, the opposition was forced to react and to become very critical. I will have to admit that. We became very critical of the failure of the government to deal very firmly and decisively with that issue. Today, when our people are faced with one of the most important decisions about their country, Belizeans, unfortunately, are divided along party lines, party political lines. And many, as has been pointed out, are confused. That is a very sad state of affairs, Madam Speaker, because we should never have come to, we have come to this. It led also, I don't know if it's because I went to the Biltmore, whatever the reason, it led to the People's United Party, which I once led, to issue a declaration very, very condemning of the mismanagement of the Belize-Guatemala relations by the government, and issued a declaration making several demands. I won't go into the demands except to point out that I, for one, has raised the matter in this House that the Maritime Areas Act should be amended for Belize to claim the full extent of our rights under international law, of our maritime rights, maritime areas rights. And this has not yet been done. Now I am told, somewhat in confidence, I suppose, that the Prime Minister may be mindful to do it after the matter goes to referendum, but before the matter goes to court, if the people so vote. It calls for the Representation of the People Act to be amended to allow Belizeans abroad, the diaspora, so-called, to vote in the referendum. That was rejected by the UDP majority in the House. It called for the joint legal opinion of Sir Eli Lauterpack and others to be updated, and that, I believe, has been done with the latest opinion of Judge Schwebel and Professor Basciani from the Caribbean. But the one that has really upset me, Madam Speaker, and I believe in speaking very frankly today, it called for all persons who satisfy the requirements for registration, that is, being 18 years and over, and Belizean citizen, born Belizean, to be allowed to register, to vote in the referendum. In view of the unsatisfactory state of the records at the Vital Statistics Office, where it is said that over 2,500 persons have been disqualified because they are unable to produce their birth certificates, which cannot be found, lost, or destroyed. Something, Mr. Prime Minister, should urgently be done to allow as many of these people as possible and who are still interested in becoming registered to be allowed to register, and instead of being disenfranchised for this referendum. And I would hope the government would act on it. So the question is, as I think the Prime Minister framed it, where do we go from here? If indeed this bill, because this is the only matter we're dealing with today, Madam Speaker, let us not lose sight of that. But I thought it was important to give a short historical background. If indeed this bill has been fixed, has fixed the problem which caused the learned Chief Justice to order an injunction against the government, then it seems to me that there will soon be a referendum, and the voters of Belize will have an opportunity to decide whether or not we go to the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, to determine finally the boundaries of the territories of Belize and Guatemala, and to settle this age-old unfounded claim once and for all. And incidentally, I don't know if it's the member for Collet. No, I think it was the Prime Minister. No, sorry, it was one of ours. I believe the member for Lake Independence, or the leader of the opposition, who raised that the question in the writ does not include rights. Sorry, it is the leader, the member for Lake Independence. Actually, if he looks at the special agreement itself, I believe it's section 3, it does include that expression, the rights of the parties, as well as the whole boundary issue. So I think, member, I've looked at it after you spoke, but the important thing is the writ, whether the writ will include it. Yes. Madam Speaker, where we are today, Madam Speaker, is that opposition members are saying that the government has not given enough time to study this new referendum bill. Every single one who have spoken before me have pointed that out, and that is the truth. On this important issue, we should have been given more time, even though from 2008 we know that the day would come. The bill will no doubt be taken through all its stages and passed today, and has been pointed out by the leader of the opposition. No one is against holding a referendum, but his contention is, and his concern is, representing members on this side, is that the bill may be unconstitutional. I don't know if that is so, Madam Speaker. Let me make that clear. Because I am a lawyer, but I'm not an expert in constitutional law. But the concern has been raised. What I do know is that the learned Chief Justice did not find that the entering into the special agreement by the executive without parliamentary approval was unconstitutional. I understand him to say that it was premature, and that only after the referendum is held, and only if the voters vote yes, that the matter becomes a live issue. Otherwise, it is pure speculation, and the court will not indulge in speculation. That is how I understand the judgment. So, Madam Speaker, the question today is whether this new referendum bill does pass muster, to use the language of lawyers, whether it's in order for the referendum to take place. I would say this: the whole process may not be perfect in the political sense, and we have been very critical about that. For instance, why the rush? Why change the holding of the referendum date in Clause 5.4 of the bill from not less than 30 days after the writ of referendum has been issued to not less than 10 days? The Prime Minister owes us an explanation for this. Why this rush? Like I said, the whole process, the whole education campaign has been abysmal, and the government must accept responsibility for most of the flaws. Humility, Madam Speaker, for a leader is a great virtue. At the same time, we should not oppose for oppose's sake. And because of the vital importance of moving ahead, let not, to use a famous George Price expression, let not the best be the enemy of the good. This bill will pass in any event, whether I vote no or whether I vote yes. But I thought I should make my position very clear on what I see as important on this day in considering this referendum bill. The bill will not have the majority in the House and will pass and will go to referendum. But on this bill, Madam Speaker, I am signaling now that I will not defy my party line, so I will abstain on this bill. But when that time comes, and it's coming soon, to vote on whether to go to the ICJ, my position is publicly known by now. I will vote yes. I will vote yes to the ICJ, Madam Speaker, because I must remain true to myself and my conviction. I will vote yes because, as Prime Minister, I supported the Foreign Ministry pursuing the path of a judicial settlement in 2007 before the change in government in 2008. I will vote yes. I may not be happy or pleased with the botched, bungled way the present government has conducted the process. I am personally disgusted. Yes, I'm personally, I want to stick to my prepared text, madam, with the issue that this issue of national importance has become a political football. It should never be. We should be united on this issue on both sides of this parliament. And that is how our people will better understand what is the issue at stake. But I am particularly distressed, Prime Minister, that a number of Belizeans will be unable to vote unless you do something about it. And perhaps when you speak, you can address that issue when you wind up this debate. Finally, Madam Speaker, I will vote yes because I am convinced, after years of being engaged with this matter, after reviewing the historical facts, after reading all the legal opinions of learned international jurists who have studied the matter, after reading the cases decided by the ICJ and the paramount importance it gives to boundary treaties, I am convinced that Belize has a very strong case to protect and preserve our territory intact, that Guatemala's case is indeed unfounded and without merit, and that if the matter goes to the International Court, the ICJ will so find. Most importantly, Madam Speaker, and we lose sight of this, that in Article 5 of that same special agreement, it states that both parties agree to accept the decision of the court. But it doesn't stop there. And within 3 months of the date of judgment, within 3 months, they will agree to set up a bipartisan commission to carry out the demarcation of the boundary line. And that demarcation, when it comes about, will run from Gracias a Dios in the Sarstoon all the way up to Garbutt's Falls, and then in a straight line until it hits the Mexican frontier at Aguas Turbias. An important element in all this. In other words, for the first time, if this matter goes forward and if the people vote yes, I am convinced that the ICJ will rule in our favor. And most importantly, because we have never had this done before. They tried it back in 1928 to demarcate the borderline. Several pillars were put up and a few cairns, but the line has not been cleared and demarcated properly. And we do need that so that the Guatemalans will know when they cross that line into Belize that they are committing an illegal act unless they have permission to come in our country. So, Madam Speaker, that is all I wish to say on this matter. Let us move forward. Let the Belizean people decide. That is the important issue here. Not court, the Belizean people. That has always been the People's United Party position, and I understand it to be the UDP position as well. Let us respect the majority decision of the people's vote in the referendum. Let us respect the vote.
That's right.
Whether it goes yes or no.
The people got the final
The
say.
people must decide.
Yes.
Vox populi, vox Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God.
Get up and stop for the class leader. Huh?
Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker. Minister, you have the floor.
I want to place on record my own congratulations for a member from Fort George. I always held the view that he has a great many of the qualities of a statesman. And I think that that was demonstrated here so clearly this afternoon. It is not the first time that he has displayed this kind of statesmanship, Mr. Speaker. On the occasion of the signing of the agreement by the foreign ministers, I also thought that that was one of our glorious moments as well. That was another historic and glorious moment. And I was very distressed that, in fact, a very senior ranking member of the opposition party, and a man whose voice seemed to be the leading voice for the Southern Caucus, the no vote, described that very, very distinguished and exhilarating moment as a circus. I thought it was mean-spirited and very, very disappointing. So I want to congratulate the member from Fort George. But I want to warn the nation and this House that his view is in fact the minority view in his party. His view is not the majority view. And I think it is for that reason that he was so passionate and so clear in articulating it, because I'm sure he's feeling a great deal of disappointment and frustration that, in fact, after all the work that he and his government put in to getting the Guatemalans to agree to take this matter to the International Court of Justice, there is an active movement afoot to try to scuttle that process by his very own party. I'm sure that keeps him up many nights. My attitude, Mr. Speaker, to this dispute goes way back to my childhood. My childhood days, as I've said in previous layers. I was born in 1948. And Mr. Speaker, it was in 1948 that the British government, who was so terrified by the Guatemalan claim and by threats of invasion by Guatemala over Belize, sent 2 huge ships to protect us. Sent 2 huge ships to protect us. And they stationed the first British soldiers in the country. I will read this to you from a magazine which was produced, and you will see how the British took this matter deadly seriously. If I may be permitted to read the caption, Mr. Speaker, this is a March 6, 1948, some months before I was born, but it's the same year. It's the Illustrated London News. Guatemala's claim to a crown colony, precautions in British Honduras. And this is what it says. The crown colony of British Honduras became the focus of a great deal of interest and attention on February 27th, when it was announced that the cruiser Sheffield, wearing the flag of Vice Admiral Sir William Tennant, commanding the American West Indies station, was on her way to Belize, the capital of British Honduras. It was stated that she had been sent because of reports that irresponsible elements in Guatemala might attempt invasion. When Sheffield reached Belize, Royal Marines were landed to take up strategic positions on the frontier and to dig themselves in at the airfield. The cruiser Devonshire, with a detachment of men of the 2nd Battalion Gloucestershire Regiment, arrived on March 1st. Admiral Tennant stated that the situation on the frontier was quiet, and the British government had merely taken precautionary measures. British settlement began in Honduras in 1638 with shipwrecked mariners, and regular settlers came in 1662. Conflict took place with Spain, and treaties were made with her, and after the breakup of the Iberian rule, in South America with Mexico and Guatemala. The Guatemalans based their claim to the whole colony on the allegation that Great Britain has not carried out one clause in a boundary settlement of 1859, which promised the establishment of communication between Guatemala City and the coast, a project in which the British government have expressed willingness to assist. Our suggestion to refer the dispute to the Judicial Court has been refused. This is 1948. However, before this document was published, the Guatemalans agreed to go to the court in 1948, but not strictly on law, but on equitable basis, and the British refused. I have been, Mr. Speaker, personally educating people on this claim. And I have said on the public television, Channel 5 repeatedly, and in private forum, that the Guatemalans were claiming the entire country. I said that over and over and over. And I continue to say that. And why I said that? Because I had an intimate knowledge of, in fact, their claim. They sent a letter to the British government on the 21st of September 1939, saying to the British that because the Cart Road or whatever it is was not built, they were seeking unilaterally to withdraw from the Treaty of 1859, and in consequence of that withdrawal, they regarded the whole of Belize as being theirs. However, I also knew that even though they were claiming the whole country, the claim was faulty in all respects. Firstly, because Guatemala's border with Belize only goes to a little bit midway in Orange Walk. The 1859 treaty doesn't go higher than Orange Walk. It's from Orange Walk down south to PG and the Sarstoon River. That's the 1859 treaty. The treaty that takes up from that point to Corozal is an 1893 treaty between the British and the Mexicans. And if you look in our constitution, you will see it's two treaties. So Guatemala at no time could have claimed the whole territory. We know that. But there were lots of people suggesting that they would want the Sarstoon, especially people from the north. And the tragedy about this thing, Mr. Speaker, is that apart from the fact that no senior person on the other side, especially those who live in the south, ever seem to have picked up a book and tried to find out the history, much less to teach their people. This is a dispute that is going on for almost 200 years. And you have elected representatives, people who have spent in excess of 10 years in this house, telling you that we don't have time, we don't know the facts, we don't know the details. Some of them were, in fact, ministers of education. They did not teach the public. It's horrendous. It's the most serious matter that faces our nation. And the majority on the other side don't know the facts. Sincerely ignorant, I would want to think, Mr. Speaker. Sincerely ignorant. They're not feigning it. But I would want to suggest, Mr. Speaker, that the man who is now leading the no campaign on the other side is either sincerely ignorant himself, or he has been engaged in a deliberate campaign of misinformation. And that misinformation, Mr. Speaker, has been directed almost exclusively at me for the last, from 2008. I want to think it has been so intense that our leader, the Prime Minister, has decided, boy, you better take shelter. Keep out of the fair. Stay away. Don't appear. Because there is so much panic on the other side. Nobody seems to have really tried to educate the Belizean people in a very serious way. And Mr. Speaker, when I came in here this morning, I reminded that today is 1 week before Good Friday, and I'm very conscious about the importance of Good Friday. That was perhaps the saddest day in the world, Christian world, and the happiest day. Because that was the day when the chief priests and the scribes, who envied Jesus, who coveted his position, deliberately lied upon him and killed him, although he came to save the world. And you know what Jesus said before he died? He looked at them and said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And that's exactly what I say sitting from this side. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Mr. Speaker, when I walked in here this morning, there were big smiles over that side, and there was the word artificial border. Artificial border has arrived. And the last meeting of this House, the member from Corozal says that he still believes that I said we have artificial border and that I said something wrong. Well, I will try one more time to help them and to help the numerous other Belizeans whom they have sought to deliberately deceive by suggesting to them that there is something wrong with the expression artificial border. Mr. Speaker, I need to elaborate upon that, because if I am designated as the foreign minister of this country, when I go abroad to speak or when I speak locally, I must say the right thing. I must say the right thing. I must be truthful. I must be honest. I must be knowledgeable. I must be informed. And if I have a border dispute, I must know everything about borders. I think it is unpardonable, inexcusable for any Belizeans not to have known what was an artificial border. In truth and in fact, in this day and age, every Belizean has a phone, a cell phone, perhaps except myself. And that cell phone has all the information about artificial border in it. So before coming this morning, I called my secretary and I said, kindly go to Google and download what you find on artificial border. And when I got up to the office this morning, she gave it to me. I'll read to you just the first parts of it. Just the first parts of it. It says, an artificial border is that frontier that has been constituted by means produced by the man, and therefore different from the natural ones. The means delimiting the artificial boundaries can be constructions, objects, cultural differences, or imaginary lines established by means of calculations and expressed in the form of geographical coordinates on the maps. That is exactly what the Belize border is. It is imaginary lines established by means of calculations and expressed in the form of geographical coordinates on the maps. Look in the Constitution. It's right there in the Constitution. But you had one media house went to town for weeks. And I was so disappointed because I had a very respected teacher who stopped me one day and begged me, please apologize for using the expression artificial border. But I could not have been more precise. I could not have been more correct. Was it ignorance when members on the other side picked it up? Is it disrespect for their people, continue to make their followers believe that in fact I said something wrong? Or is this pernicious behavior? Something deliberately to demonize me and to hopefully put my life in danger. Because as I pass around the street, you have people who support them so angry calling me artificial border and laughing at me. Now, people who have never spent any time in school are looking at me and laughing at me by saying the expression artificial border. And what causes that? Because of the type of leadership they got. Mr. Speaker, I won't dwell on that one. I will pass that on. It's so easily accessible. You could get it right now, and hopefully we will never, ever hear any person who pretends to want to lead the people in this country take such a flippant attitude to something as important as our border. But, Mr. Speaker, I had another run-in. I remember going down to Punta Gorda and saying to some Coast Guard people there that they need to be careful when they are out on the high seas, because we neither have maritime borders. And that became a big issue. That became a huge issue. Foreign Minister says that we don't have maritime borders. By people who should have known. And why I say that we should have known that? Because in 2002, going to 2007, the negotiators, who were then People's United Party negotiators, started to try to arrive at the maritime borders. They wanted to demarcate the maritime borders in Belize. And after they had spent thousands and thousands of dollars, they were advised that unless you have established terrestrial borders, you cannot arrive at maritime borders. That was publicly stated by Insulza. That is what brought that process to an end. Nonetheless, eminent Belizeans, people whose very words are taken as if it's gospel writ, have been saying that I am wrong, that Belize have borders that are internationally recognized because the borders are stated in our Constitution. These are eminent people, and I'll go into details. But the truth is, Mr. Speaker, borders are international treaties. The description of your border in your Constitution is of no effect unless, internationally, unless it is in fact the consequence of an agreement, a treaty between you and your neighbor. Because it has to be agreed between you and your neighbor. It's real lines, imaginary lines. But let me tell you now what one of the leading voices in the PUPs, a man who can do no wrong, proudly says about that. I will deal first with the Sarstoon Island, then I will go to the maritime border. This I am reading really from, and you all could double check it. This is channel5belize.com 114170 on the computer. Extracted from channel5belize.com. Eamon Courtney, former Minister of Foreign Affairs. Former Foreign Minister Eamon Courtney has has chimed in on the confrontation between the Belize National Coast Guard and the Guatemalan Navy, merely 3 days after the special agreement was amended. Courtney's position puts into sharp perspective recent statement by Minister Elrington, in which he discussed Belize's terrestrial and maritime boundaries. While Elrington maintains that our borders are not clearly delimited, Courtney says that the Constitution, as well as the Maritime Areas Act, patently define Belize's border. The Constitution and the Maritime Act. But neither the Constitution nor the Maritime Act can define borders. Borders are the result of international treaties. And this is what is stated in this report. It's publicly there. And if you think I am mistaken, I brought this along for those of you who are scholarly and would like to check it yourself. Strong borders, secure nation. It deals with what, in fact, are borders. It says here, this is Courtney. My understanding of what occurred is that a contingent of Coast Guard and BDF people were on the island in the Sarstoon River. Now the island in the Sarstoon River, a part of it is on the north side of the midline, and therefore it is in Belizean territory, and another part of it is in Guatemalan territory on the south side. This is Amon Courtney, leading figure in the People's United Party, making the statement in public TV on the 18th of March 2019. Oh, that's where we get it from. That's a note on this document here. And what it says here, every Belizean by now should know that the entire Sarstoon Island belongs to Belize. Not half, no half, the entire. But this man who wants to lead the nation, who is in fact the force behind the People's United Party today, and the hero in the courtroom, did not know that in fact the entire Sarstoon Island belongs to Belize. The entire island. You will be able to find this because this is public information, but he goes further. It says, it seems to me that the position of the foreign minister is untenable. He insists on saying that he is unclear of where our borders are. Insofar as the Sarstoon is concerned, the first schedule of our constitution defines that border by reference to the 1859 treaty between the United Kingdom and Guatemala. Insofar as our maritime and terrestrial EEZ borders and boundaries are concerned, that is set out in the Maritime Areas Act. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's patent nonsense. It is nonsense on steroids. But that is the blue-eyed boy of the PUP. They know a vote. They know a vote. He was never a blue-eyed boy of the member from Fort George, because the record will show that on 2 occasions, the member from Fort George unceremoniously removed him from his diplomatic posting, even while he was in the midst of a conference. So he got it wrong on the Sarstoon. He got it wrong on our borders, land and sea. You can go and find it for yourself. It's right there. And you see his photograph there. I'm not lying. You could go and find it. But that's not the end of it. This you will like. This you will like, because the no vote of the PUP are giving all kinds of explanation why they want to say no. Complains about the campaign, complains about my performance, etc., etc. But listen to the position of Mr. Courtney in relation to this dispute, this very vital dispute. News 5, January 11, 2019. Courtney proposes deep freeze as ICJ alternative. Amon Courtney, former Foreign Minister of Affairs. My belief is that we should agree with Guatemala for a minimum for 25 years that there will be no attempt to resolve the territorial dispute. He wants to put the dispute in a deep freeze for 25 years. There would be no negotiations unless Guatemala is prepared to accept our borders. In the meantime, we have to sign a defense non-aggression pact. With who will we sign it, please? We can't even get the Guatemalans to agree to sign a protocol for us. How will we get them to sign a defense non-aggression pact? How will we get them to put this claim in a deep freeze for 25 years? You put the claim in a deep freeze for 25 years and you have 17 million Guatemalans across the border. Do you know what will happen to Belize in 25 years' time? Mr. Speaker, can you imagine what will happen to the Chiquibul? Can you imagine what will happen to the Sarstoon? And can you imagine what will happen to the pristine lands that are in Cayo? But this is his proposal. It is a proposal that is as ludicrous as putting ex-BDF soldiers and ex-policemen along the border. And while these poor people are there without any protection, without any weapon, the people who are making these proposals will be living on mountain tops and perhaps will be enjoying themselves out on the islands. But this is the proposal. He said we have to sign and implement a treaty that protects the environment, that fights crime and fights illegal immigration. You will recall that 2 years ago they signed 13 agreements between Belize and Guatemala. Why haven't we implemented that? I am suggesting that my position is let us put to one side the dispute. Let's live as neighbors, and I believe that another generation who have lived together without aggression, without education, people about Belize es nuestro, we can resolve this by negotiation. That is my view. That is his view, and it's a view that was taken as recently as News 5, January 11, 2019, a few months ago. He wants to put it in cold storage. Marlene Queer asked him, if you put forward a decision now as an alternative to going to the ICJ, the first question that any person would ask you is that you were at the helm. You were foreign minister. You had the position, the capacity to introduce an alternative when you held that post. Why not then? This is his response. He says, I don't think you are listening to me. I said that while I was in the process, I argued endlessly for my position, but my government, Prime Minister Musa, called right now and asked him, call Stuart Leslie, call Ambassador Leslie, call Assad. That has always been my position, and I argued for it. I was outnumbered and outvoted. We went in the 2005-2007 process, and we ended up at the ICJ. So to be clear, I have been consistent in advocating that module. So there it is. The man who is leading the no vote, and very likely financing the no vote, is making it clear that his position has always been that we don't go to the ICJ, that we put this matter in a deep freeze for 25 years. Is there any surprise that, in fact, it was such great enthusiasm that he took up the case to derail the process that would have caused us to have the referendum here on the 10th of April? Now, Mr. Speaker, just for clarity for the record, the referendum unit, after we had had occasion to transfer Ambassador Alexis Rosado to Guatemala, was headed by Ambassador Stuart Leslie. Prime Minister appointed Ambassador Stuart Leslie, who is and was then and is still now the confidant of Johnny Briceño, the leader of the opposition. So he headed the referendum unit. When I journeyed, and I will clarify this, when I journeyed to Washington to sign this special agreement, because I was the one who got the Guatemalans to finally agree to sign the special agreement. The recommendation was made by Insulza in 2007, but it was not signed until 2008. And if my memory serves me right, it is Foreign Minister Rodas. And why did Rodas sign it in 2008 after refusing over so many years? Very simple. My position was very, very different from my predecessors. I was scrupulously polite, careful, respectful of the Guatemalans, and they reciprocated. Kindness begets kindness. Politeness begets politeness. And so, without a problem, we got that document signed. According to Insilza, it was the most significant event in the history of the Belize-Guatemala dispute, the signing of that special agreement. I readily concede that the spade work, the groundwork, was done by the People's United Party. When we got into office, we commended that route, we adopted it, and we were able to score the goal. They set the play. We scored the goal. And at that time, all the People's United Party officials who were normally go with us, because we were fully bipartisan then, were present, including Eamon Courtney. He was present right there. They had more to do with getting the special agreement prepared than I had. They worked with our international lawyers. I did not bother myself with that. But coming back to Stuart Leslie, when we had to send Alexis Rosado to Guatemala, the Prime Minister appointed Stuart Leslie, confidant of the leader of the opposition, to head the referendum unit. And we worked with him for months. As a matter of fact, he was in charge of getting the education campaign going all over the country. Then what happened? The same thing happened to him that happened with Elisa Schumann. He was advised by his party that he had to make a choice. He either stay with the referendum unit or lose his position in the People's United Party. He could not be the confidant of the deputy of the opposition leader and be so closely associated with an event that was in fact the responsibility of the government and ministry. So the poor man had to resign. We were all saddened by it. But that's how it came about. We were sad to see him go. But we have done even more than that, Mr. Speaker. I had said to the Prime Minister that once the special agreement was signed, my role really had been finished, because the Foreign Minister can only do so much. Getting this matter to the ICJ will now have to fall into the hands of the Prime Minister. I told him that. He would have to lead the charge. He would have to carry it over the goalposts. And he took up the challenge. And he put in a new set of people, absolutely new, over whom I have no responsibility, not one responsibility. And they're the people who have been, in fact, conducting this education campaign. Some of the people who were there with us will remain. But the matter is headed by the Office of the Prime Minister. It's not me. But I can say that we, and I personally, advocated for close collaboration with us and Dr. Assad Schumann on the matter. Because if anybody is committed to the process, it is Assad Schumann. He is fully committed to the process. And he understands why, Mr. Speaker, he understands why. The year 1948 is a very significant year, Mr. Speaker, an exceedingly significant year. That was the year when the United Nations divided Palestine. Divided Palestine up to make a homeland for the Israelis. And I brought this here, the Palestine's historic compromise. When I go abroad to the United Nations, I pick up these things because I think that they are important and Belizeans should understand. In 1948, Palestinians own all this in green. All of it in green. And when it was divided up by the United Nations, the Palestinians were given 44%. And the rest was given to the Israelis. Today, in 1969, when there was the 1967 war, when the war was ended and the dust settled, the Palestinians only had 22% of the land. And today, they have 12% or less. You see, they have lost it in 70 years. You see how they have lost it in 70 years? No matter what they have done at the United Nations, they have relentlessly lost their territory. The belief now, the popular belief in certain circles, is that they may well lose the whole place. Prime Minister Syed Musa knows this story better than I. Assad Schuman knows this story better than I. Lisa Schuman knows this story better than I. Their ancestors hail from the Middle East. Mine very likely from Africa, lower down. They know what it is to become refugees in 70 years. These people are brutally expelled from their country and can't go back. Every day they are dying to try to get back. Every single day. When you know things like this, and you have to know things like this if you want to lead a nation, you have to know what is going on in the world. You have to know what can happen. Journalists ask me what happened if Guatemala were to invade Belize. What do you think would happen? I will tell you the truth. You know why I'll tell you the truth? Because when you go to the doctor and you have stage 4 cancer and you ask him, doctor, tell me what's wrong with me. He can tell you have stage 4 cancer. When the Guatemalans come across, what do you think they want? They want the land, they don't want you. So where will you go? And that brings me back to an incident which took place in 1977. 77, 78. Guatemala had planned an invasion in Cayo. And everybody from Benque and Cayo started to flee, including a sister of mine who, in fact, lived there at the time. And as she recounted it to me, she was a teacher at the Catholic school. Father Reyes let them early to go home early from school. She was in constant communication with a Peace Corps teacher who was there, and the Peace Corps teacher was updating her. He says, the next telephone call I get will be a call from my embassy telling me that they're coming to here, lift me out of Belize. In that time, the Hawksworth Bridge, among others, were booby-trapped. They were bombed to prevent the Guatemalans from coming in. Since I have been foreign minister, we have seen the Guatemalans amass troops on the border. We have seen them how they operate in the Sarstoon. We have seen them how they have carried our people across the Livingston. We see them. But you tell us what we can do, except send a protest note. What else can we do? Actually, I am thankful so far that they did not or have not yet captured any Belizean from over the side and carried them across to Guatemala, as they did under the member from Fort George Watch. 4 security personnel were picked up and carried, and we couldn't do nothing except to depend on the international community to bring pressure on Guatemala to release them. So when we advise about people taking trips to the SARS-2, we make it clear. It belongs to Belize, but it's an area under contention. In that area there, the Guatemalans have thousands of soldiers. They have some huge naval boats. As a matter of fact, they have some patrol naval boats that can shoot for half-a-mile distance. Guatemalans have an air force that is over 200 years old. And in the period in the 70s and 80s when we were negotiating for the heads of agreement, they were camouflaging their air force and dropping their members in the Peten area. So I have no illusions about what can happen when you have territorial disputes. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I had to help quite a lot of Taiwanese settle in Belize. Why do you think I had to help them settle in Belize? They were fleeing Taiwan because they feared invasion by China. And if you listen to your international news the way I do, you will know that there are hundreds of thousands of migrants, especially out of Africa, risking the Mediterranean Sea and dying, trying to get refuge because they can't live in their own land because of some territorial conflict or the other. And almost every country has territorial conflict. India, Pakistan, China, Vietnam, China, India, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, all over, all around us. So, Mr. Speaker, when you see me passionate about going in favor of going to the ICJ, it is because I understand what the options are, and that is my opinion. Not everybody agree with me with my opinion. Some people think that I am fear-mongering. They are entitled to their opinion. They are entitled to their opinion. But I know what I'm saying. We have a choice. We have a choice. We go to the ICJ where we know that nobody has anything against us, where we have been assured that we have a watertight case, where we have been assured that we can't lose, where we'll be able to deploy the best lawyers, and where we have certainty that we have support of the international community, the United Nations, and everywhere, and that we were going to win our case. That is the option for the ICJ. The option for the no ICJ, I believe, is that then we will have to contend with the behavior of the Guatemalans and their generals. And if you have any doubt as to the Guatemalans' intention, those of you who live nearby would have seen what is taking place on their television. The president himself is including in the Guatemala map the country of Belize among the young people. You think that that is a light gesture? It's a very unnerving gesture. And never forget, the closest ally of the Guatemalan, as some people from the Zingfent like to say, are the Israelis. The closest. The closest. So it is not a situation where you're going to be able to vote no and go home and think you're all right. What happens, I'm told that after the last referendum in Guatemala, when the yes vote was given, immediately there was an influx of Guatemalans in the south of Belize, cutting out land. They thought that they had gotten Belize. What do you think will happen when they hear there's a no vote in Belize? And who will you turn to? You saw the release by the Europeans. You saw the release by the British. You saw the release by the US. They're not trying to interfere in our business, you know. They are not trying to interfere in our business. But these are people who have always been good allies to us, who are doing all in their power to try to help us. And they're saying to us, be serious about this matter. There are three things that never come back, Mr. Speaker. The spoken word, the spent arrow, the neglected opportunity. It is not true, as the other side is trying to suggest, that they have gotten some great victories at the court, and that the victories that they have had at the court show that even though we say we have an airtight case, that we could lose an airtight case. Nobody lost a case there. There was no loss at that case, you know, the hearing. On the contrary, from 2008 until 2019, the PUPs have been saying day and night that I did not have any authority to sign the special agreement, that it was unlawful, that it was unconstitutional. The Chief Justice dismissed that claim out of hand. Dismissed it. He treated it with the disrespect it deserved. First thing you hear them say, they will try to appeal it. They will try to appeal it. But I have been signing these things on behalf of the government for the last 12 years. That's an international treaty. Our constitution, our law provides for it to be ratified in the Senate. That's all it was done. With respect to the other claim, the writ of referendum, the court didn't find that that was bad. As far as I read from the judgment, all the judge said was he wanted some time to think about it. He think there might be something there. My only worry about it was that I would have wished that it could have been resolved before the 10th. I'm not sure whether waiting until after the 10th to resolve it will be anything other than an academic exercise. So there's no victory there. Where is the victory? The position of the no vote on the PUP side is a deliberate strategy to frustrate holding the referendum to satisfy the principal legal advisor of the party, who has made it public that he wants the matter to be put in deep freeze for 25 years. No self-respecting politician, Belizean politician, should ever be heard to say he never had enough time to be informed and educated. He doesn't know the facts. In my constituency, I have spent every Thursday evening educating my people on the issue. I find time to bring them together, to educate them, to give them a snap. Everybody who comes. And I've gone down to Cahute. I have gone down to San Antonio in Colombia. I have gone down to Midway, Middlesex. I have gone down to Hopkins. I have gone down to Sienbite. I have gone down to City River, all on my own time. I have personally canvassed people. I leave my house 5:30, 6:30 in the morning and meet people and invite them to go and get registered wherever they are, because they may not know how serious the matter is. Suggestion that you put BDF soldiers on the border to protect it. They would be massacred. Not by the Guatemalan military neither. There are all kinds of criminal elements out there. So, Mr. Speaker, the need to get a decision at the ICJ, as has been said by the member from Fort George, is urgent, because whereas he make reference to the terrestrial boundary, it is also equally urgent that we get the maritime boundary sorted out. And if you look at any research document or any book or whatever it is that deals with maritime boundaries, you will see that the Belize boundaries are not internationally recognized. We have to have that done if we will be in a position to defend ourselves. And my fear, Mr. Speaker, since I'm at it, my fear is that the more foreign people you get coming to the country, because we're getting more influx of people from all over the world, and if you seek to challenge them for a lawful entry, and they raise the issue of your border, I'm not sure to what extent we'll be able to defend it. That's my view. There are others who have different views, but that's my view. Let me finally end by saying this, Mr. Speaker. I find it exceedingly incomprehensible that we in this House should be fighting to prevent the ordinary people from expressing their right to vote in a referendum. In truth and in fact, whereas the People's United Party passed the Referendum Act in the 1990s, the promise to make them decide this matter on referendum was given as early as the 1960s. I knew that because I personally was present when some of the meetings were held and when, in fact, the public meetings were held and the promise was given. You will be able to vote on this matter for a referendum. Any final decision, that was taken from the 1960s. So I find it inexplicable that there will be those who want to prevent them from exercising that right. Also, too, Mr. Speaker, I find it inexplicable that we, the people in here, who are the mere agents of the voters, have to first give permission for them to be able to exercise that right. They are our boss. We are not their bosses. They are our bosses. They make the final decision. We take their instructions. So I find that quite incomprehensible. In the circumstances, Mr. Speaker, it goes without asking that I support this bill 100%. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I have to be respectful to my elders, as the member from Mesop just mentioned to me. But I must say a few remarks about what the honorable member from Fort George said. I do respect his opinion, as if we should go to the ICJ or not. That is his personal opinion. And you have to respect the personal opinion of all Belizean people, madams and Mr. Speaker. And he made a couple quotes about what George Price had said in the past. Well, I would like to remind the honorable member from Fort George of another quote that George Price made. And it says, "Be careful when you hear your enemy praise you, because you must immediately ask yourself, what wrong have I done that my enemies praise me?" Secondly, Mr. Speaker, as I was growing up, I would hear I'm not sure if it's the editor or the publisher of the Amandala, frequently say that we are in a PUDP situation in Belize. And I must say this is the first time that I have personally experienced and witnessed it. And on a third note, Mr. Speaker, we are where we are in this country because of the last two leaders that we have had. Mr. Speaker, can you deal with the gallery, please? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Continue, Councillor.
Mr. Speaker, why are we here today? Why are we here today at this special sitting of the House? Mr. Speaker, we are here today because the judiciary of Belize, through valiant efforts of bright-minded legal minds, have defrocked the Prime Minister. They have defrocked the Prime Minister. That is why we are here today. Thus, Mr. Speaker, in his usual way of perverting the course of justice, he is now here once again introducing a bill to cover up his unlawful actions. It is as simple as that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the rule of law is one of the most important pillars of a democracy that a Prime Minister must follow. Mr. Speaker, the Chief Justice of Belize and the Court of Appeals have indicated to this Prime Minister, and I will use an interpretation in our language. Basically, they have told him, slow down, my boy. Slow down the process, my boy. Give us a chance to analyze the documents legally, to see if we have crossed our T's, if we have dotted our I's, and if everything is in order. That is not something that a leader should dismiss. That is something that I believe a leader should be able to appreciate. But what did the Prime Minister do, Mr. Speaker? In a response to what the Chief Justice said, he replied to a reporter, I believe that if we break it down to the Belizean people, and this is, I am quoting the Prime Minister here, they will understand exactly what's going on, and they will understand that the local shenanigans in courts here absolutely cannot be compared with the process at the ICJ. Now, this is the Chief Justice of your country, and this is how your Prime Minister, our Prime Minister, is referring to the Chief Justice of the country. Because the Chief Justice, as they rightly said, we have not won a case against anybody. The Chief Justice just gave an indication of what he believes should happen based on what he has recently reviewed. Mr. Speaker, I will continue with what the Prime Minister said. Sorry, I must apologize. What the Prime Minister said in the first part that I quoted is about the Court of Appeals. What the Prime Minister said about the Chief Justice, he said that all of us, and in particular the Chief Election Officer, all of us restrained from holding from the referendum after he would have tried the entire case. A number of things about that, and I am quoting the Prime Minister. With no disrespect to the Chief Justice, he is not exactly known for timely, fast hearings and quick delivery of decisions. Mr. Speaker, the foundation of a democracy depends on the independence of the three branches. The three branches are the executive, who basically is the cabinet, the legislature in which we operate, and the judiciary. Mr. Speaker, in any democracy, once the executive overpowers the legislature, as they are doing here today, and insults and disrespects the judiciary, as they have done countless of times, it leads from democracy into tyranny, basically dictatorship. And that is the fear that I have with how this government and the Prime Minister continuously operates. Mr. Speaker, it says, the rule of law is exemplified by impartial legal systems that protect human rights, civil liberties of all citizens, particularly the minority. This is indicated by an independent judicial branch and many other things. And that's why I am emphasizing that the problem we are having is a disrespect or disregard for the rule of law. There's another quote, Mr. Speaker, that says, the law is the only thing that makes everybody equal. And that's a simple statement, but a profound statement in a democracy, Mr. Speaker, and I will repeat it. The law is the only thing that makes everybody equal. But for the law to work, the judiciary has to be independent. The judiciary has to be well financed. People have to have trust in the system. And the poor people of the country have to be afforded certain abilities through financing by government to be able to even approach the court. As presently happening, Mr. Speaker, only the people that have the ability to be able to defend themselves in court. And the people that do not have are the ones that are affected. That is why you see our jails filled up with 99% of impoverished, poor Belizeans that don't have a right to what we call justice. This is not the first time the Prime Minister has come to this house, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister, I know you remember, when we had the Petro-Carib claim, the Prime Minister got a whiff through his brother, who was there in the other side advising that they would have lost. The Prime Minister came back to the House, introduced a bill to be able to remedy the illegal and unlawful acts that he has been doing when it pertains to the borrowing and the spending of money. It happened again, Mr. Speaker, when the CCJ gave a ruling about our tour operators and that they should not have dealt with the GST that a certain company was paying. The Prime Minister refused the judgment from the CCJ, came to this House, passed and introduced a bill so that he can protect his unlawful acts in the past. He is here again, Mr. Speaker, because he does not want to listen to what the court has to do. You have to understand the court has not even had an opportunity to properly dissect the claim. But the Prime Minister now has jumped the gun and is now introducing another law to be able to protect himself from the unlawful actions that he has constantly been doing. It is before us, it has been before us, it happens every single time when he is in trouble. He either legislates his way out of problem or he litigates his way with our money out of problem. And that is a historical record, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the problem I have when leaders do not follow the rule of law is that it trickles down through the bureaucratic system into the public service. Whereas if the Prime Minister is seen to be abusing and breaking the law, if the Prime Minister is seen as condoning the corrupt actions of his ministers like the Penner Gate, the Garpi Gate, and other gates, then the people in the public service will start believing that corruption is the mode of doing things. It is normal. If the boss could do it, then we could do it. Or if the boss could do it, he can't tell us what to do or not to do. That's one problem, Mr. Speaker, with the leaders breaking the rule of law. But the worst problem, Mr. Speaker, is that our children, the future of our country, start believing, one, that they can do any crime, they can deal with any corruption and get away with it because the leader of the nation does it, and because he condones the corrupt acts of his ministers and they get away with it. And therefore, it is a horrible example and message that we are putting on the ground. Why do you believe, Mr. Speaker, that corruption is so high in our system of government? Why do you believe that our crime rate is so high? Why do you believe that there is no respect for law out there? Man, go up on the opposite side of the roundabout, nobody put on light the night. The basic things that keeps our fabric of this society together has been torn apart. And it is because of the leadership of Dean Barrow and the United Democratic Party, Mr. Speaker. I predict, Mr. Speaker, that the next move of this Prime Minister will be to find a way to retrospectively change our present laws to allow him to be Prime Minister forever. I sincerely believe that. But you don't got one, you only need maybe two more. Mr. Speaker, he will do this by coming here to this house and gradually and softly passing laws that will eventually allow only his supporters to run and vote in a general election. That is what I believe. Mr. Speaker, he is already disenfranchising thousands of voters who cannot get their documentation out of vital stats. And how has he done this? Well, he has inserted Sister B in that office.
I take strong objection to this member calling people's name in the South, insinuating that decent, honest people is directly involved in corrupt practices in order to keep people from getting on the voters list. And I would ask the member to withdraw that statement that it is wrong. It is wrong. And this house must not condone it. You could stand up and say that Said and Barrow that the two worst leaders in the country. Can you just don't say that and got the country way there? That is fair game because of the politics. But when you will take honest, decent people from off the street and bring them here, something is wrong with it.
Member, let's refrain from calling names.
I did call a name, Mr. Speaker. I said a sister and B. I don't know that's a name.
Come on.
Anyway,
let's continue.
But it seems to have hurt him because you know the truth really hurts. Continue. Yeah, it hurt him in a bone because he know that we got pictures, Mr. Speaker, of how they have been manipulating the system to hold back people from getting their documents. We have videos, Mr. Speaker. I know I call some people in this house mean at the video of them manipulating the system for political gain. So don't make the member for mess up, stand up and talk silliness because he knows that I am speaking the truth. I apologize for the silliness. Further than that, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, with all his powers, has reshuffled the cabinet so that he can be in charge of election and boundaries. So he can be in charge of the manipulation of the referendum election and the next general election. It was confirmed by the Minister of Foreign Affairs that he not going to do it. Not anything again called borrow take over. So I don't need to say it. I'm just repeating what. Mr. Speaker, we could stay here for like 4 hours if then Bali wants to do that, you know, because I got patience.
Continue. Continue, member. Continue. Continue.
Mr. Speaker, I have another complaint, and it is about the seat in where you sit. I'm not saying it is you. It is the position of the House, the position of Speaker. It is undemocratic, Mr. Speaker, for the Prime Minister to force upon the legislature that a bill so important,
Mr. Speaker, again on a point of order. Mr. Speaker, on a point of order. In any democracy, he cannot impute motive on the Speaker of the House. In any democracy, he cannot do that. The Speaker is here to sit, to be impartial, and he must not bring the Speaker of the House into our party politics debate.
Huh? Mr. Speaker.
And I hope Madam Speaker stop you.
Madam Speaker, I am just complaining based on historical facts.
Honourable Member, you also know the rules.
Yes, ma'am, and you can stop me when I am breaking the rules.
Yeah,
I have no problem with that. I am saying that it is unacceptable for a bill of this importance to the future of our country to information and documents be provided to elected members of the people. Elected members of the people.
You're shift course side. You better talk about the Speaker just now. Your shift course. Huh? After you know fool, your shift course.
Proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You are questioning the Speaker.
I'm not questioning the Speaker.
You are doing that just now. Your shift course.
Continue.
Can I continue, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, if we in this country, in a supposedly democratic state, do not give enough time and information for elected members of the country to be able to dissect a bill of the magnitude of this one, that is something that anywhere in the democratic world, Madam Speaker, would be frowned upon. And I am humbly requesting that these actions don't continue. The last House meeting we were here, Madam Speaker, the exact same thing occurred. And I put that one beside me because it was not as important as this one.
Okay.
You say,
well,
dictator, you sound like dictator.
The past Prime Minister and the present Prime Minister, they said it. They have had time to be able to analyze what is there because they were in the belly of the beast. But we represent our people, and our people are suffering from the mere fact that they do not have the necessary information. And therefore we, as their elected representatives, should be afforded the information with sufficient time so that we can discuss it. That simple action of not giving your elected members the documents on time to debate is an undemocratic move. It is the executive forcing its power on the legislature and should not be tolerated, Madam Speaker. Secondly, Madam Speaker, we are now the Prime Minister Musa was right. The bill will be passed. But it is a non-binding bill. So, let's go back. 2008, we had a referendum, Madam Speaker. 61.54% of the Belizean population voted for an elected Senate. 36.6% of the Belizean people opposed an elected Senate. And the Prime Minister, because the referendum is not binding, totally ignored it. Madam Speaker, all I am saying is these are the things that should be in place so that when you go to a referendum, the people of Belize are aware that all the necessary information, documentation, analysis, and everything that should be in place, it is in place. Why is that important, Madam Speaker? Because it gives a certain level of trust. You go out in Belize right now and you talk about any politician, and we saw what happened today. They do not trust us. And they have valid reasons for not trusting us. And the only way to be able to change that perception in Belizeans' mind is if we do the necessary reforms so that we can have systems in place that people trust, Madam Speaker. It goes to the fundamental problem of the referendum. I will repeat, as my other colleagues have repeated, from the beginning we have said we are for having a referendum that is fair. But, Madam Speaker, and a referendum that is legal, Madam Speaker. But if the Chief Justice and the Court of Appeals, they tell you hold it down, by slow it down and leave it because we're not sure, it should give you a level of questioning in your mind as a leader. Should I slow it down to be able to find out where exactly I am going wrong? If it wasn't for that claim, Madam Speaker, we would also not be here in this House. And it is not to stop a referendum. It's to make sure and humbly request that they do what is necessary for it to be fair and legal.
Stop one referendum, for what then? That's the way you got to vote for.
Madam Speaker, what is fair? I'll give you some examples of what I don't believe fairness to be. And I say, fair business. You compete against this gentleman here and this gentleman here. Just like how they do with their contractors. Well, then you put out an agreement where say, one, to be able to participate, you have to be UDP. Two, to be able to participate, you have had to have $10 million work in the last year. Three, to be able to participate, you have to be UDP. Four, to be able to participate, you have had to sign a contract with a UDP minister. Five, to be able to participate, you have to be UDP again. And then they put it out to bid, and the man get it, and they say, oh, fair. That is what I believe is not fair. Madam Speaker, with the referendum, what is fair? The government of Belize have received money from foreign donors.
You want to know? That's the one who fight for the money, that's the way you...
Madam Speaker, what the Belizean people are requesting is that the education campaign be done fairly across the board. We know they ask for no money. We are just saying that there are proponents out there of the no. They are people that don't agree with the government's position. There are many of us on this side that don't agree with the Prime Minister Musa's position. And we respect their position and his position. But the people have a right to be able to be provided with the information that is quite crystal clear as to the positive and negative of going and the positive and negative of not going. We have not received that, Madam Speaker. In the villages of Kyle South, they go house to house, they drop off a leaf pamphlet with the voting, what do you call it? The sample ballot with the yes, and they push it. All the documentation is yes, and they push it. It is paid political activists of the red that is doing it. And we know. And I'm just speaking of Kaya South. You can ask anybody here from representing other constituencies. In the honorable member from Mesopotamia's division, you even have red and white flag with the yes.
And they want to vote overwhelmingly with yes.
He can do that because he controls what you call a garrison constituency.
You try to get a garrison?
And if he would learn something today, he should Google what garrison constituency means, and he should not be proud of that.
And I don't think it's this conversation for the assembly today, for this meeting today.
Okay, ma'am, I will refrain from speaking of his garrison constituency.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker, the Belizean people want to know why the rush. I think many members have said that in the past. Why the rush? So I have some questions. Why the rush? Why is it that the education campaign cannot be redesigned, managed, and implemented by a well-resourced independent referendum commission? Why is that, Madam Speaker? Why is it that they don't invite and incorporate all Belizeans? Because this is not about PUP or UDP. This is about all Belizeans. Why don't they invite the other political parties that we have around, Madam Speaker? Why don't they invite the members of the Belize Peace Movement, Madam Speaker? Why don't they invite every single NGO in the country, Madam Speaker? Why don't they invite all the churches, Madam Speaker, to be able to be a part of this process, to be able to disseminate information to the level where people can understand? Why is it, Madam Speaker, that we refuse to amend the Referendum Act to make the result of all the referenda binding? What is so difficult with that, Madam Speaker? Why is it that we refuse to amend the Maritime Areas Act to claim for Belize the full extent of rights under international law? Why are we refusing to do that, Madam Speaker?
The Prime Minister just explained that just outside.
Why is it that we refuse to amend the Representation of the People Act to allow Belizeans abroad to vote in Belize, Guatemala ICJ referendum, and to guarantee the integrity of the voting and counting of ballots in an ICJ referendum? Why, Madam Speaker, are we disenfranchising tens of thousands of Belizeans that live abroad? Every single member over there, I bet, has a family member that sends them a box once in a while. The Western Union has records of money that comes from the foreign countries that these people reside. Yeah, remember from Mesop say he get barrel, he no get box. I used to get my box too, Madam Speaker, that's why I could talk about it. You understand me? My family, my brother, my sister, and my mother reside in the United States. And they don't have the right to decide on the future of Belize. And they are just 3 people of tens and thousands. A large part of our economy, Madam Speaker, is based on the amount of money that these people send back to our loved ones in Belize. Why are we ignoring a large section of our society? And I won't continue with that because this is the baby of the honorable member from Caribbean Shores, and I guarantee you that he will expound on it a little bit more. Why, Madam Speaker, is it that we refuse to amend the current legal opinion and update it to include the latest information and developments on the territorial and maritime claim, and that the updated opinion be widely circulated? I have a problem with leaders of the past that operate in darkness. I really have a problem with that. We have to learn, Madam Speaker, as present and future leaders, Madam Speaker, we have to learn to operate in the day of light. It is important, Madam Speaker, and that is why I am a fighter for reform. We cannot continue with leaders operating in the dark, and by chiripazo, you say it in Spanish, you end up to find out what the decision was many years after.
I hope the translation is okay for the verbatims.
Chiripazo are just like by coincidence.
Okay, thank you.
It's not a bad word, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, why is it that we refuse to address the backlog at the Vital Statistics Office, which is being caused due to political interference and mismanagement, be cleared up so that the Belizeans applying for their documents can receive them in a timely manner, and that immediate action be taken to ensure equal access and treatment be given to all Belizeans? Madam Speaker, I have not seen this anywhere in the democratic world, where when you are about to have a referendum on the most important topic of the existence of your country, parallel to that you are having a re-registration campaign to weed out as much Belizeans as you possibly can. Madam Speaker.
The owner wants to re-registration before the referendum.
Madam Speaker.
The owner wants to read.
Madam Speaker, the most important point I would like to make on that topic is that put it on pause, as the party leader said. Slow it down, guys. It is important that that re-registration process, Madam Speaker, be done effectively, efficiently, and fairly, and legally. Any Belizean, even if it is one Belizean that does not and is not given an opportunity to participate and vote in a referendum, is a Belizean too much to be staying out of that process, Madam Speaker. So just like everybody else, we are pleading to you guys, put the pause button, do what is right, rectify your errors, make sure that Belizeans that are illegitimately have their documentation, be registered, and still, I believe they should consider the Belizeans in the diaspora that want to participate, Madam Speaker. Because, as was said, I don't remember where it was said, but most of the Belizeans that live abroad are there because of economic reasons. It is not because they don't love their country. It is a reality that they have had to go to provide for their children and their families that are here in Belize. I would like to remind the Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, that we have given instructions to our attorneys that they should continue the claim as far as they believe that it is right, as far as they believe that there is something there that is contrary to the laws of Belize and to the constitution of our country. So, Madam Speaker, it is important that we, as a country, when we move forward, that the document that we sign on is solid, is constitutionally right, is legally right, and that the people can re-establish trust in the document in which they are about to vote on. Madam Speaker, the past two leaders have spoken on this, but it is their personal opinion, and I do not agree with their personal opinion. It is as simple as that. And just like how I respect their point of view, I would hope that they respect mine, Madam Speaker, because that is democracy. Madam Speaker, I'd like to close the debate by giving the scenarios to the people of Cayo South and the scenarios of the Belizean people as to how I see the referendum and what are the differences. Well, to me, I'll do it as simple as possible. It is not technical. It is definitely not legal. It comes from the heart, Madam Speaker. I've had sleepless nights worrying about this. Option number one, and this is for all Belizeans, UDP, PUP, Christian, Muslim, cultural differences, all age groups, doesn't matter, rural or urban. It is for all Belizeans to listen carefully. Option number one, if you are 100% convinced that you have received all the necessary information and that all the information that you have received is legal and within our constitutional rights as to going to the ICJ, Madam Speaker, then and that we have absolutely, absolutely nothing to lose by going to the ICJ, Madam Speaker, then I would recommend to those people, vote yes. But on the other hand, point number 2, Madam Speaker, if you as a Belizean citizen that is registered to vote have the slightest of doubt that we will win or not, if you have the slightest of doubt that we can lose land or sea or whatever rights we have been discussing, if you do not understand the information that is provided to you, if you do not believe that the information provided to you is fair, is legal, if you are even of the opinion that we might stand a slight chance of winning, if you even have 1% doubt that we might lose, that is enough for me to advise you to vote no. Madam Speaker, Belize, and this is crystal clear in my mind, Belize has absolutely everything to lose. Guatemala has absolutely nothing to lose. To gain, sorry. No, Guatemala has nothing to lose. The circus on the top got me a bit distracted, Madam Speaker. Led by the chairman of their party, Madam Speaker. I will repeat. If you believe that we have in the least minimum percentage something to lose, Madam Speaker, then you have the right to vote no. Why? Because we are giving our sovereign right to 8 foreigners that don't know us. Or 15 is even more. That's even more worrisome for me. We are giving our sovereignty in the hands of judges that don't know us. They don't know the language that we speak. They don't know the friendships that we have. They don't know the food that we eat. They don't know the struggles that we have in this country. They don't know the level of corruption in which we are governed. They do not understand none of these cultural problems and societal problems that we face. And so my fear is that, like in the past, when foreign powers made lines through countries that ended up in millions of people dying, and this is examples in India, in Africa, and we can Google it. The divisions without consultation and without consideration for culture and society ends up in millions of people dying. And so I am pleading, Madam Speaker, the Belizean people have a difficult choice to make, and they will be given the opportunity for the referendum. But it is a sacred decision. And so if you're not 100% sure, if you are not happy with the information, if you do not understand the information, and if you believe this government is corrupt, then you have to vote no. But just like how I respect the opinion of my past Prime Minister, I will have to respect the voting decision after the referendum. And so if it is a yes, then we will have to respect it. And if it is a no, then we will have to sit down and plot the future for the benefit of Belize. A future that does not give up away a single blade of grass nor a centimeter of our land, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Just 1 minute, Honorable. Just 1 minute. On a matter of, excuse me, member, just a minute. There's just a matter of correction. You made mention of closing the debate. You meant ending your presentation.
Yes. My apologies.
Just for the record.
I would have liked to close it, but yeah.
No, obviously that's not your responsibility. Go ahead, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker, as we debate this very important bill, as I listen to many speakers today, of what direction we want to go for the country of Belize. I heard the Deputy Prime Minister spoke about a treaty. Well, I want to rephrase it now and call it the Placencia Treaty of 2008. Because initially we heard it was a special agreement. And a treaty is like a covenant. In the Bible days, we used to talk about covenant. Now we are talking about a treaty. It's a sacred agreement between two parties that cannot be broken. It can only be broken if both parties agree to break the treaty. And so when Guatemala decided that they were going to change the date of their referendum, it had to be in agreement with the other party, Belize. And we as a country agreed that Guatemala, you can change the date to this treaty in terms of the date of your referendum. I conclude now it is a treaty. It's a treaty of 2008 between the country of Belize and the country of Guatemala. It's a fact. The Deputy Prime Minister just says a treaty. So, Madam Speaker, by Guatemala going ahead of us, then the people of Belize has become more skeptical of how to vote on the referendum day whenever it has been chosen. Because we are always skeptical about Guatemala. We are a much smaller nation, and every time the Guatemala talk comes up, then the Belizean will always oppose. We heard about the 1968 proposals. We have about the 1981 heads of agreement. And to every time those talk come up, the Belizean people oppose. I come from the south of the country. And every time we hear that Guatemala wants from the Sibun to the Sarstun, even though of late, the present president of Guatemala is saying that Belize es nuestro. They want from the Hondo to the Sarstun. I feel now that we have a government that has been getting very weak, and now they realize I need the support of the opposition to advance my position. And it is critical at this moment, at this juncture, because the Belizean people will be there to make that final say, that final decision. Madam Speaker, the special agreement, or the treaty that I now call it the Treaty of Placencia of 2008, was decided upon, and when I say all the PUP drafted, the person who signs it is the one that is totally responsible. And that treaty also says that if we go to vote and a no vote is cast, Guatemala has the right to come back anytime they want with the same treaty and ask again for a vote, because it is already embedded in the special agreement that we call the Treaty of 2008. Madam Speaker, I'm in position of a proxy vote from the Queen Square Division. And on the proxy vote, they're asking a security officer to sign the proxy. But the problem the officer have is because they already determined who's supposed to vote for the officer. I will call the name. One, the white Frank Smith.
No names. Absolutely not, member. No. That is wrong. That is wrong. Please do not do that.
And I'm in the House, Madam Speaker, I'm supposed to have immunity here. I can say what I want, that is affecting the Belizean people. But I will accept.
Honourable member, I respect your privileges of the House, but you also need to respect my chair. And I'm saying that you will not be allowed to call those names.
Respect,
Please
Madam
proceed.
Speaker, no problem. But imagine that the proxy vote is out there in the hands of ordinary Belizeans to decide and force people how they should get their proxy into the system. Madam Speaker, our courts in this country the Chief Justice has decided that he will put an injunction. Whatever you want to call it, it's an injunction. An injunction is an injunction. I will put an injunction on the case that was carried forward to the Supreme Court. Our Prime Minister chose to come to this National Assembly today to present a bill, even though there will be a court case on Monday, April the 15th. And he will go back to the court now and say, I have made the correction, you cannot lift the injunction. We are seeing now that there is no separation of powers.
It hasn't happened. How do you know it's going to happen?
It's going to happen. It can't change.
Kindly proceed. Just move along, please.
We have seen where the executive and the legislative have become one, because almost every member of the ruling party is a part of the executive. So whatever they decide...
Honourable member, be very careful. You're imputing improper motives. Be very careful with your standing order. Please
Speaker,
proceed.
It's a fact. The whole nation can see that. But anyhow, we are here today, Madam Speaker, and we are here talking about the present bill before the National Assembly. The Friends of Belize sent a joint declaration yesterday. The British government, European nations, the American government, and is saying that we must make sure that this bill be presented and let us get it done with as quickly as possible. There's also a declaration from the present President of Guatemala, because his term expires in June, well, I could stay until January, but he wanted to prove to the Guatemalan people that he is a president who makes sure that we come to head with this present situation in Belize and Guatemala. Madam President, I represent 26 villages. And when I go to my communities, I don't tell them how to vote, but I tell them how I will vote. I tell them how I will vote.
The
and there were several consultations.
Hold on a minute, please. The gallery need to settle down. Thank you.
There were several consultations in my constituency. And I believe the education process is a flag. Why? Because we signed a special agreement in December of 2008. That is 11 years ago. And 2 months before our referendum, we are now going to the people, one-sided, and telling them we must vote yes to the ICJ. If it had been a two-way process, why we should vote yes or why we should vote no, that would have been understandable. But I had to take up my position, I had to do my own campaign, and I went to all villages on my own without any financial assistance, even though I'm an elected member of this National Assembly, and I go and explain my position and my direction. But I never, ever tell anybody how to vote. Madam Speaker, while we talk about the 1859 treaty, I always have a problem with the 1859 treaty because in 1859, Guatemala was not really an independent country. And our Great Britain signed an agreement with Guatemala. When they signed the agreement, at the time the British were only allowed to cut lagoon up to the Sabun River, which was the boundary. They allowed the British to cut lagoon from the Sabun all the way to the Sarstoon. When the Garifuna people came to Belize, the British told them, you can settle anywhere south of the Sabun. Because I have no jurisdiction over that particular portion of the country. And today, Madam Speaker, all these indigenous people are in fear. They have declared this particular region of the country their home for over 150 years, likewise the Mayans. And so, I want to really ask myself, what will happen on the day of the referendum? How the Belizean people will vote? What will happen the day after the referendum? And what will happen when we go to the ICJ? We have an agreement or a treaty that says, tell us what Guatemala is taking to the court. So you want us to vote now blindly, not knowing what we are going to court for as a nation. That is where I have a serious concern. And I will go back to history, whoever started and drafted it. We should have come to the Belizean people at that particular junction and asked them to vote in a referendum because it is their own self-interest. Now after it has been drafted, we want to ask them now to vote. I have no problem because I'm only here representing the people. This is an opportunity for them to vote, but with the present structure of the bill, Madam Speaker, it makes it difficult for me to support this particular bill. As a country, we have to figure if going to the ICJ, what is up for us to lose? And that is always a question that lingers in the mind of most Belizeans. And that is the reason why there are reservations. And if we had done a proper education campaign, I might say, oh, well, if we can refer it to 10 years from today, or whatever time you want to talk about. But if we had put it in our curriculum at the school, today there have been no problem because the Belizean people will have understand why we are going to the ICJ. So governments after government failed. And today now they want to rush it down our throat that we must go to the ICJ in the very near future. So, Madam Speaker, regardless of the circumstances, whatever the outcome is, Minister, we are going to the ICJ once you get my yes vote. Madam Speaker.
Go ahead, member.
As you call, you see, he's calling the name of a standard bill, and I will call the name now, Madam Speaker.
Sorry, Madam Speaker. Sorry. I can't listen no more.
When they were doing the education campaign in my constituency, even though the referendum you will say it is non-political, my opponent was the person in charge of making sure that the education campaign is conducted. There was a special case in the village of Pomona where a member of the village council was asked to make preparation for them to go for a meeting. When my opponent heard that the money was given to that particular councillor, he literally went to her house and told her, you have no authority to do anything for the referendum unit. And when they go in, they're supposed to check with the elected village council in that particular community. That's a fact. You can ask somebody. And who was responsible for the resources? My opponent in the constituency. So, Madam Speaker, I see this whole charade as a one-sided, and I am going to say this. I can't tell my people how to vote as I end up my debate, but I am going to vote no to the ICJ. The people have standard ways you can decide how you are going to vote. But at the end of the day, whatever the consequences may be, we have to live with it. So, Madam Speaker, I want to say thank you very much. I may have made some misjudgment, but please accept my apology. Thank you.
The gallery is asked to please keep it down. We don't want to have to clear the gallery.
Or giving up land, sea, or the rights of any part, not a blade of grass, not a grain of sand. And not so, even to Guatemala. What brings us here today, Madam Speaker? Why has it become necessary to bring to this House, at this time, a matter that should have been tabled for debate months ago? Well, Madam Speaker, let me tell you why. The answer can be found in a line, I will borrow a line from Sir Walter Scott, the great British poet. This is why we are here today. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive. Madam Speaker, before I begin, let me first congratulate His Lordship, Mr. Kenneth Benjamin, the Chief Justice, for standing up and ruling in the favor of the rule of law.
Honorable members, have you read Standing Order 38.8?
Madam Speaker, everybody has been reading.
I know, but I'm saying it.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Please
so with your
take
permission.
note. Please take note.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The people of Belize, Madam Speaker, thank Chief Justice profusely, and he will be remembered in history in this country. He will also be remembered in Guatemala for standing and ruling for Belize. Madam Speaker, this House meeting today should be seen for another act of deception designed to sustain a lie that this government is capable of managing this country. This proposal, Madam Speaker, on the referendum we should ask, is it consistent with, is it supported by, or is it in contravention of our national constitution? This, Madam Speaker, matter discussed here today is a constitutional matter, in my view, and in the view of many litigators. We must follow the appropriate process and procedures. Otherwise, we run the risk that any decision made here today and onward can be declared null and void in the future by the courts. Madam Speaker, what this referendum bill is attempting to do is to circumvent the process of a constitutional amendment. That is a clear requirement, Madam Speaker, arising from a special agreement. The government side has been advised, just as our side, that the determination of our boundary in Guatemala by the International Court of Justice requires a 2/3 majority. Madam Speaker, we have been advised by our attorneys that this may be the case. Madam Speaker, and our attorney is no lightweight. He has gone to the Supreme Court and won. He's gone to the Appeal Court and won. And if he goes to the CCJ, he will win. And my attorney, Madam Speaker, is no showman. And by the way, Madam Speaker, that is my personal attorney too, Amon Courtney, of which we are proud to stand by. Madam Speaker, the status, since 2008, the status of our sovereign state has been consistently exposed and eroded, simply, Madam Speaker, by the mismanagement and misguidedness of foreign affairs. And again, I won't get personal, but we all know who that is. And I guess, Madam Speaker, he admitted that he was instructed to stay in his room and keep quiet, muzzled, because every time he speaks, more people want to vote no. So they threw him under the cane truck. Not the bus, the cane truck, Madam Speaker. And they brought in Che Guevara. And it got worse, Madam Speaker. It got worse. So, Madam Speaker, the mismanagement has resulted in deep divisions among us. Party lines, churches, family. Because, Madam Speaker, it was never managed correctly. The sincere and the perseverance of our leader, the sincerity and the perseverance of our leader, the efforts of our leader of the People's United Party to treat this as a national issue, a multi-partisan approach, fell on deaf ears. It was viewed with disdain and scorn. That's why we are where we are today, Madam Speaker. The word politicized now fully describes the divisiveness of this ICJ referendum process. Perhaps, Madam Speaker, the most blatant example is the sneakiness with which the writ process was done. They tried to keep it as hush-hush as long as they could. And it was signed, Madam Speaker, on the 28th of February 2019, months before. This has now been exposed, Madam Speaker, And the government knew from 10 years ago that there were controversial matters, legal and possibly constitutional, that had to be addressed. Madam Speaker, these matters have now been brought to the fore by the People's United Party, placing its faith in the judiciary and our worthy Chief Justice. That's why, Madam Speaker, we are here today. The legal challenge launched by my party on the government's handling of the ICJ referendum, Madam Speaker, has resulted in this hasty calling of this House sitting today. This government does not listen, Madam Speaker. And the leaders have to be seen for what it is. When they are caught on the wrong side of the law, they attack, they criticize, they bully. Answer the questions with integrity and be sincere about it. Otherwise, that government is viewed as an incompetent, rogue, and arrogant government, Madam Speaker. So for the Prime Minister to proclaim now that the people are supporting the government's effort to hold this early referendum is again another deception. And there's evidence of that out there right now, Madam Speaker. The few people out there and the few people traveling in buses today is evidence of how much support the government has for the referendum. Madam Speaker, you don't ask now how much persons per seat of bus. There's how many seats per persons of bus. 6 persons in a bus over in Drag East. Well, 7 with the one who took the photograph. That's why, Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister had to ask a member to stay out, keep hushed. You're causing too much problem. The reality is that the public sentiment out there is not on their side. Madam Speaker, anything the government proposes, the people will oppose. Anything the government proposes, the people will oppose. They have had enough of this government. The message from the people is very clear. The government has lost public confidence and trust. No one is any more intimidated, Madam Speaker, by the Prime Minister. No threatening rhetoric, no bombastic language. Not even the Chief Justice now is scared of the government. And so he rules against the government.
But try to keep the Chief Justice out of your
That's
discourse
Justice,
rather than formalities. Please do not go there.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will continue. Madam Speaker, because of what the PM has done, the way they have managed the situation, Madam Speaker, at this moment, there were people that were inclined to vote no, who now would prefer not to vote, or to vote no to the ICJ, just because they've mismanaged the entire situation, Madam Speaker. The yes vote has become one and the same as red. A vote for a discredited United Democratic Party. That's the way it seems. Madam Speaker, the People's Declaration is very clear, and I will stand by that. The perception of a biased public awareness campaign has reduced its effectiveness. And as the propaganda-style approach intensifies, it worsens. There is additional time now, and maybe we should use it constructively to review the approach and to make best of the time we have. But will this happen, Madam Speaker? I agree with members that there are more than 2,000 people disenfranchised in my constituency, Madam Speaker. I have about 180 persons that I cannot get birth certificates for. There are some that have to do late registration because they can't find the information, which is unfair, Madam Speaker. How can I go to a referendum when my neighbor cannot because he's not found